Hi, folks. Thanks for watching my monologue. As you may have heard, there's been a recent run on guns and ammunition. I just wanted to let you know that Guns Etc. is in a 10,200 square foot building which holds a lot of guns. So Guns Etc. is open and has a lot of product. Or you can go to gunsetc.com. That's gunsetc.com. And if you like my monologue, please subscribe to our channel using 960 The Patriot. Welcome back. Happy May 15th. In the category of reading the New York Times every day and finding three things that tick me off, that's the answer William Buckley once gave when asked how he comes up with a column idea 3 times a week. I don't usually do this, but I read a column by Jennifer Rubin in the Washington Post that she had published this week, and you'll forgive me, I hope. I just could not stop thinking about it or let it go. It's titled, Never Trump Becomes Never Republican, and there is so much wrong with it. You have to wonder who at the Washington Post even thinks any of this stuff she puts out is even worth putting out. But they do, and she does, and yes, it got to me. Because it shows in sharp relief something, a term William Buckley also used once, that I think is more applicable here than almost anywhere else. It shows junk thought. If I can ask you to indulge me. Mrs. Rubin starts by writing this, quote, Conservative commentator William Kristol explained in an interview for the Post that he finds it impossible to go back to the Republican Party. Trump's been renominated, and liberating the party from Trump or Trumpism seems awfully far-fetched, Kristol said. Obviously, if he loses in November, things are more in flux, but I can't honestly conceive of working with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and former Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He added, I'm just disgusted by what they've been doing really for the last 3 years, that I don't much look forward to that, close quote. What struck me here is something that may not have struck most people, but it did strike me. Bill Kristol says, I can't honestly conceive of working with McConnell, Cornyn, and McCarthy. He adds he's been disgusted by what they've been doing for the last 3 years. My first thought was, that's the language of Joy Behar. She says daily she's disgusted with what McConnell et alia have been doing. To the degree Bill Kristol is any kind of conservative anymore, start with that fact. He's saying the same thing Manhattan-type liberals are saying about the same exact people. Maybe that should give some pause to self-described conservatives. Remember when Elie Wiesel was told Yasser Arafat was given a Nobel Peace Prize? He said in shock, quote, I'm in the same club as Arafat? Maybe those self-described conservatives who use the same language, not about Trump, mind you, but McConnell and McCarthy and Cornyn, as ABC Manhattan liberals might want to check themselves and the club they are putting themselves in. They just might want to check themselves. That's point one. Point two, he says, to repeat, I can't honestly conceive of working with them. Meaning McConnell, McCarthy, and Cornyn. What the heck does that mean? Is Bill Kristol an elected member of any body from a state house to the House of Representatives or Senate? Is he a lobbyist? What does he mean he can't work with them? What work is there for him to do with them? What a weirdly arrogant thing to say. Bill Kristol runs a website and his mouth for a living. What work is there to do with anyone? Unless it's to give unsolicited advice. And I'm pretty sure McConnell and McCarthy and Cornyn don't have much time or interest in working with Bill Kristol, that is to say, taking unsolicited advice from him. What kind of weird arrogance is that? That's point two. Now, don't get me wrong. Kristol once was good and strong. Once. He really was. He did great work for a lot of our causes and conservatives. I haven't, however, seen it in a very long time, and he's made himself famous for several years now, simply throwing grenades at his movement and party for backing a president and leadership in the House and Senate that has given us all that he used to want. Strict constructionist judges and Supreme Court justices, tax cuts, a rollback of China, rollback of Iran, the strongest support for our allies any president has given or shown since Ronald Reagan, maybe even stronger. What is the damned complaint? Those are all things, Kristol, when he was good and a listened to conservative, those are the things he argued for. Now he's getting it. More importantly, now we are all getting it, all of it, and he's unhappy. That does, I'm sorry, make me question what kind of conservative he now is, if any kind. But the arrogance of saying not being able to work with them, I don't know, that's like me saying I don't know how I can work with, say, Tucker Carlson anymore. It'd be news to Tucker that I ever was working with him, or that he'd want me to, or that I'd want to. It'd just be a weird thing to say. Now, on to what Jennifer Rubin goes on to write in her own voice. She writes this in her column. She writes, quote, "I can't speak for others, but the reason the Republican Party is not worth saving is that with few exceptions, for example, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan and Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, its members have fully embraced Trump and Trumpism, a noxious brew of nationalism, contempt for truth, xenophobia, an America First agenda. Any of these would have sent me fleeing from the party. Collectively, they make it impossible to return. Sadly, my feelings toward the spineless Republicans who blindly support Trump, opposed impeachment, enabled his lies, attacks on institutions, have not found the nerve, even in a pandemic, to take issue with his lies, impulsive reactions, and dangerous preferences, can be summed up in a single word: contempt." Close quote. Well, let me start by telling Jennifer, not a lot of people really think of Charlie Baker and Governor Hogan when they think of beau ideals of the Republican Party. They just don't. And not a lot of people really thought her all that important to the party herself in the first place. Try this on for size. Have any of you ever, whether you're a neocon, a theocon, a paleocon, a libertarian, ever read a Rubin column, even in the halcyon days of George W. Bush's presidency or Barack Obama's, and sent it to others, sent it around saying, "This is greater, this gal gets it her, please pass along," or "must read"? I never have. In fact, she's become famous for not being a conservative at the Washington Post editorial page ever, but for being a registered Republican who was lucky enough to get a column there. God knows why. I can think of 100 better writers than she. But for being a registered Republican who is a liberal, or at least who is now a liberal, and in any event only writes things that are anti-Trump, that they'll keep her on board for, I guess. You know, there ought to be a test of some degree of credibility for conservatism in our modern day. The test ought to be, can you ever find one thing to write about when you agree with something the president of your party has done, even if you don't like him? One thing? I get that honesty demands critique, sure, but doesn't it equally demand praise when there is praise? As Abraham Lincoln put it, something I tried to abide by: stand with anybody that stands right, stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. What's wrong with that? But you see, getting Kavanaugh and Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, perhaps a better record than even Reagan or either Bush and their appointments, not to mention 51 judges for the United States Court of Appeals and 138 judges for the United States District Courts, that never once got any praise from Jennifer Rubin, or for that matter, Bill Kristol. Who, by the way, do they think is the second most important person after the president in marshaling through those appointments to successful nominations? It's Mitch McConnell. Who's the third most important? It's John Cornyn. But let's go back to what Jennifer Rubin writes for a second. Trump and the Republicans are a noxious brew of nationalism, contempt for truth, xenophobia, and an America First agenda. Any of these would have sent me fleeing from the party. Collectively, they make it impossible to return. Sadly, my feelings toward the spineless Republicans who blindly supported Trump, opposed impeachment, enabled his lies and attacks on institutions, and have not found the nerve, even in a pandemic, to take issue with his lies, impulsive reactions, and dangerous preferences, can be summed up in a single word: contempt. Close quote. Seriously? She favored impeachment? Do you know a single conservative of any stripe that favored impeachment? Hell, I know liberals who didn't favor it. 4 Democrats voted against it. How about liberals like Jonathan Turley and Alan Dershowitz? They were against it, but to find a conservative or Republican who really supported it? Ever? Contempt for the truth? That's contempt for the truth. You know what conservatives and Republicans spend most of their time doing when it comes to contempt for the truth? Going after Democrats and media lies in their contempt. Think about what they did to Brett Kavanaugh, for example, which evidently means nothing to her. Xenophobia? What's xenophobia? Was closing flights from China a bad idea, even in the light of the month of May 2020 at this point? And just what part of the American First agenda does she oppose? Returning more taxpayer-earned money to taxpayers? Cutting regulations? I didn't even get to her third paragraph of her column, or on, but I didn't think I needed to. I want you to know any wolf can don a sheep's cloth. We usually call that a false prophet. It's amazing to me that big institutions like the Washington Post think it's worth perpetuating and broadcasting this sort of thing. It's more amazing to me someone in control of their faculties can write and submit such a column. I'm not sure where the phrase "the arrogance of ignorance" originates from, but I'm pretty sure I know it when I see it, and I'm pretty sure there's no better use of it than right about here. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.